Welcome to the webinar, Lead Poisoning Prevention Week, Making an Impact, presented to you by the National Center for Healthy Housing and the National Safe and Healthy Housing Coalition. Build the case for lead poisoning prevention with your elected officials. Your presenters are Chris Corcoran and Julie Cruza.
Engaging elected officials. Again, the key thing to remember is you can do this. This is not really super hard. But with the right set of tools, you'll be able to have a good event, especially if you're inviting them, for example, to something during Lead Poisoning Prevention Week. So elected officials 101, remember they work for you. These folks are elected by you, by the constituents. Another thing is they love free publicity. So when you're inviting them to an event and you want to have them be a speaker or somehow launch some type of a new initiative, etc., they're usually game for that, especially this time of year. So again, with Lead Poisoning Prevention Week coming up just 2 weeks before the actual election, I think there's a lot of folks that will be interested in attending an events and being a part of that to share the good stories. There has been a lot of press, as we know, about lead poisoning prevention over the last year, and so it's a good time to take advantage of that and turn lemons into lemonade, so to speak. They love data, they love stories, so especially when you're in an event, if you have a legislator and a family that's somehow benefited from the different programs that HUD or CDC, for example, funds, it's great thing for them to have that those kind of stories to tell and share later down the line, and also data, which would most likely go to the elected official and the key person in their staff that would be handling health or housing, depending on the office. And then the last thing I say there is local sometimes better, and that's where my next slide talks about. Starting off local, so for example, here in Connecticut, and I, like Kara, I'll use my own experience here as an example. I have two senators, Senator Richard Blumenthal and Senator Chris Murphy. They both have offices that I can walk to in about 10 minutes across the Connecticut River from where I am. And so I set up my local access points because I know that there's a lot more ability to access them here. These are folks that are working in the Hartford Hours, basically out of constituent services. But really important, find one of those people, the person who's in charge of community or some type of engagement, and get to know them. You really want to become someone that they'll recognize your name when you call them, and also when you're making requests, because they have the connections to the DC office. If I'm trying to figure out who to get a hold of down in DC and I call the main switchboard at Chris Murphy's office, I'm probably going to end up in the voicemail. However, if I've talked to Sean Scanlon in Hartford and he says, call Joe Sanders in DC, there's a lot more kind of access and gravitas when you have those types of relationships locally. And then also there's impromptu moments. There's examples where if all of a sudden they need it, they want to have an event somewhere, they're going to give you a call and say, hey, where would be a good place to do that? So you're becoming a source for them, whether it's for specific information about a bill coming up, or just, again, the senator wants to do an event around X. The picture in the slide is actually Senator Richard Blumenthal, and he contacted our office because he had heard we were given an award from HUD with a local health district called the Naugatuck Valley Health District. So he came out and he did a presentation to us and talked about it with the media coverage there, and that was because of some of the relationships we had built over the years. Now for event planning, again, you hear about this location, like when people are making restaurants. It's also really important in event planning because, as much as you want to be able to contain or control your environment. So I've done events outside where we were at the home of someone who's we made life safe and healthy, for example. It was a great event because I got to speak to the homeowner. The press that was there got to go inside the house and see some of the different fixes that had been made, and there was good coverage there. However, it was a windy day in October, so there was a big banner standing behind the podium that had the Connecticut Children's logo, and it was about to blow over. So for the entire press event, there had to be one of the people from the corporate communications office literally standing behind the banner, making sure it didn't blow over on top of the person speaking. So you want to think about time of year, obviously. In addition, for example, at the State House here in Capitol, called the Legislative Office Building, there are meeting rooms and hearing rooms that you can reserve ahead of time if you want to have an event. The advantage there is all of the local TV networks and all of the reporters that are working the Capitol all the time, they know where they can go. They know where to set up their cameras. They've been there 100 times literally. They have direct access where they can plug in and they can send their feeds directly to their station. So there is something to be said for doing things in an environment where there's familiarity for the different pieces of people and members of the press. And this event, as a matter of fact, on the screen here at the top, this event here was an event that was hosted in the room right next to where I'm sitting. It's a conference room. And this is one where, taking advantage of the relationship. So Chris Murphy is seated in the middle of this slide, and he wanted to do an event about what was happening in Flint. So they contacted my office, and I knew who to invite. The person to his right is the commissioner who's in charge of water here in Connecticut through Department of Public Health. And then I'm seated to Chris Murphy's right, and then seated to my right is a gentleman named Paul Dworkin, and he happens to be in charge of my office here at Connecticut Children's. So knowing that I needed to have all those folks at the table was really important to have a successful event. And the reason we got that call is because, again, going back to that local access thing, I became a local resource for that aid, and he knew who to call, and we were able to put together the resources and host the event. And also, though, again, at the bottom here, that maybe should have been at some of the top, is clear dates. You don't want to plan an event and not know that, all members of all the local health departments in Connecticut have to attend a training that day. So anytime, for example, here in Connecticut, I'm going to plan an event, I'm going to call the Department of Public Health right away and just ask them, are there any events that you know of that are going on, mandatory or otherwise, that would interfere or prevent people from being able to attend a special press event. Your stories have impact. Again, we're going to talk later about bringing stories to DC. I know over the last 2 years, 3 years now, every year, the National Safe and Healthy Housing Coalition organizes a lobby day or legislative education day for those of us who don't lobby. And one of the most important things we find down in those meetings is when the people who have been impacted by lead poisoning, for example, come to talk to legislators and share their stories, it has a big impact. So this picture here, again, shameless promotion here, self-promotion, that's Chris Murphy again. This is about 5 years ago this picture was taken. The other person in the picture is Leo Diana. He was the mayor of the local town, Manchester, Connecticut, where this picture was taken. He's now actually a sitting judge on the state Supreme Court. And in this picture, it was a site visit. I got a call from Chris Murphy's office. Hey, we want to visit one of the homes you've made lead safe. And so I contacted a family. It happened to be a grandmother who owned the home. And her daughter was living with her at the time. And her daughter, her granddaughter, her daughter's daughter, was also living there. And they were there. It was a sunny day. It was a nice day. This was not a press event. There was no intention of bringing in a press to this. This is just a situation where Murphy really wanted to know about how the money. And I'll tell you what, his conversations with the family, with me, were really in depth, and it showed that he had a real understanding of our problem. And in the future, if he's ever on the the floor of the Senate, for example, talking about increasing funding the HUD, he may think back to this time. I met a grandmother once. Her daughter was going through a hard time. She had to move home with her granddaughter, and they were able to move into a home that was lead safe and healthy because of this funding. That's the kind of story that's going to go downstream. You never know when your visit may be something that they can draw upon to become to be either make a case for something or show knowledge of something that's important. So I would encourage you to get involved. Just as an aside, we are also hosting an event, and we're expecting John Gant, perhaps from the HUD Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes, to be here on October 27th, and we'll be inviting the other members of the delegation. We have 5 other sitting House members and another U.S. Senator running for re-election. So we're looking forward to having a really big event, and we're going to turn it into a roundtable as well while we have all the people, the key players from Connecticut together. So do take advantage of the information here. If you have any questions, my contact information is, and of course, the slides I shared with other resources are made available.
So my name's Julie Cruza. I'm with the National Center for Healthy Housing. I also staff the National Safe and Healthy Housing Coalition and work nationally with the Find It, Fix It, Fund It Lead Elimination Action Drive. All right. Well, I will give you the tools for all of the wonderful things that Chris told you about having a member of Congress at your event and all the advantages of that. And we really encourage you to invite your member of Congress to speak at your event. At the National Safe and Healthy Housing Coalition, we are always trying to promote lead poisoning prevention and lead hazard control and healthy homes with Congress, because ultimately they need to put a lot of federal resources on the table if we're ever going to eradicate lead poisoning. And so it is of critical importance, as Chris pointed out, to invite members of Congress to speak at your event in your district to show them that lead poisoning is something that is real, that is in their district, that is impacting their constituents, and that they should care about. Right now is an exceptionally good time to invite your members of Congress to a Lead Poisoning Prevention Week event. Every member of the House of Representatives is running for Congress, and they are all home in their districts because they are not actually working in D.C. from now through the election. So they will be home for a full month, and they would love nothing more than to be at a public event on a critical issue. And of course, lead poisoning has been very much in the headlines recently. So this is a terrific year for you to reach out and invite your member of Congress to come to your event and speak about lead poisoning. Maybe that will give them some publicity, but critically, you're also educating them and introducing them to yourselves and your program and to families impacted by lead. If you're not able to get them to a Lead Poisoning Prevention Week, you still want to engage them in your program. And so you could have them speak at your event, or you could have them do a site visit, as Chris pointed out in his presentation. Bring them to a home of someone who was affected by lead poisoning. And Cara Eastman from Omaha said that she's going to be doing that this Lead Poisoning Prevention Week as well. Or you can simply go to their district office and talk to them about the impact lead poisoning has on their constituents and community, and help them prioritize eradicating lead poisoning. So again, they are home in the district between October 1st and November 11th. And of course, October 23rd through 29th, which is Lead Poisoning Prevention Week, falls smack in that space. So it's a great time to have them out. As Chris pointed out in his presentation, copy. We have a draft invitation to you at our website, and you can see the web page of our draft invitation, and we have 3 different types of sample letters. We have a sample letter to invite your member of Congress to an event or to visit your site, or we have a sample letter if you want them to do a site visit with your program, or we have a sample letter if you want to just request them to meet with you in their district office, which should be close to you. And at the bottom of all of these slides, I've put a bit.ly. If you enter your computer bit.ly/meetyourmember, all one word, and meet your member are all capitalized, all one word. And that'll go to this web page where you have all of these resources that you can just pick up and use, for example, in Word documents and so on, to bring your member of Congress out and to work with them. So what you do need to do is figure out how to get this invitation letter to them. And so to invite a House member, you would just go to www.house.gov to find your representative. And by entering your zip code. And senators, just go to www.senate.gov, and those links are showed on the slide. And by the way, people have asked us throughout the webinar, but all of these slides will be available on our website at the end of this presentation. So what you want to do is you want to go to the websites to find the addresses of their district offices and how to reach their schedulers. Now for representatives, they'll probably be pretty close. If they have a big district, they may have more than one district office. And even your senators who are statewide have multiple district offices, so they'll likely have an office that's close to you. I'm just showing you some sample websites here. So here's the website of my Congresswoman, Eleanor Holmes Norton, and what you can see over on the right is when you go to her website, and every member of Congress has a slightly different website. And again, I got to this website by going to www.house.gov and looking at my member, and then I got to this website, and on the far right you can see it says contact, and the second item under contact is request an appearance. So I would go to that web page and put in my request there. Here's another example. This is Congressman John Larson, who would be someone perhaps that Chris would reach out to because he's in Connecticut. But you can see in the middle of his web page about requesting a meeting, it says to submit a scheduling request for a meeting, please fill out my form here. So again, you would click there, and you can submit the sample invitation that we provide through that form. So with each member of Congress, you'll probably have to just go to their website and figure out the customized way to do this. One other thing is you can see where this congressman's office is, and he has a local Hartford office. So if you're based in Hartford, you could phone or fax the invitation. You can phone the office, but you could also fax the invitation to that office as well. This stuff is really important. It's following up. If you have invited your member of Congress to your Lead Poisoning Prevention Week event, you will need to follow up with them. And what you want to do is you want to call their office and ask who the scheduler is. The scheduler is the person who's in charge of their schedule, obviously, and that's the person you want to get to. You want to make sure that the invitation for them to attend your event has gotten into that scheduler's hands, and you want to follow up by phone. And unfortunately, this is where the work comes in, but you do want to be persistent. But this is where, as Chris has explained, that over time, as you develop relationships with your members of Congress offices, you'll have relationships, you'll have people that know you, and this will be much easier, and they'll be able to do repeat events at your sites each year, you know, to the great advantage of them getting some publicity that they care about the community, and of course to you drawing attention to your program. So you do want to be prepared when you meet with your member of Congress. You do want to educate them about your program and about why lead poisoning and other healthy homes issues are so important in their district. And we, again, if you go to our website, that bit.ly/meetyourmember site, have a lot of resources, including state fact sheets on healthy homes and lead poisoning prevention, and then talking points on lead poisoning, healthy homes, and other home-related health hazards such as asthma as triggers. So again, if you go to our website, we have talking points on each of these things that will be important to give to members of Congress. You can take and adapt them. And we do have state healthy housing fact sheets that have a lot of lead poisoning information for many states, not for all 50 states, but for many of you there might be information that you can copy and paste there. And some of those fact sheets include local information, which is really what you want. And what we encourage you to do is you can take some of these national statistics or state statistics that we offer, but you definitely want to add in the local statistics about what is the impact of lead poisoning in their district, and what is the need, and what is the service you provide, and what's the benefit you have provided through your program. And this is what we urge you to do as you are talking to your member of Congress, which is help them build the case for eliminating lead poisoning and provide the resources for that. So we encourage you to educate your member of Congress about the need for both the CDC and HUD, and for that matter, EPA, lead, healthy homes, and asthma programs in their states and districts, and especially on the benefits for health and cost savings provided for these programs. We really urge you to explain to member of Congress what those programs that they fund do. The Center for Disease Control, Healthy Homes and Lead Poisoning Prevention Program is the program that tracks blood lead levels in children to find out where there is lead poisoning among children and where there are surges, such as Flint, among lead poisoning. This program also promotes healthy homes interventions to improve health. And of course, this is the program that provides the data that tells HUD where is there a lot of lead poisoning so that they can go in and provide remediation. We encourage you to also educate them about what HUD does, especially if you work with HUD and CDC in your communities. HUD's Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes identifies and controls lead paint hazards in eligible housing. And an amazing statistic is that each dollar invested in this program returns at least $17. The range is $17 to $220. We always just say the $17 because that in and of itself is a huge cost savings to society. And that these lead hazard control programs can be a major benefit because a lot of these HUD programs also address other health and contribute additional health and other cost savings. I want to talk to you a little bit about lobbying. Everything I've talked to you about up to now does not constitute lobbying. If you tell members of Congress, if you educate them about lead poisoning and other healthy homes issues in your district, and if you educate them about how important HUD and CDC programs are and the services you provide, regardless of how they're funded, if you educate them about all of those things, you are not lobbying. You are not lobbying. So educating members of Congress about the need and about your services does not constitute lobbying. But many of you are allowed to lobby, especially nonprofit organizations are allowed to lobby. And so if you are allowed to lobby, we encourage you to do so and actually encourage them to increase funding for those programs, which does constitute lobbying, because then you're talking to members of Congress about a piece of legislation, which is appropriations legislation. So this slide I was just on shows that if you are a charity, you can lobby as long as you only spend under 3 to 5% of your expenditures on this. And of course, if you're talking to a member of Congress for 10 minutes about this or 20 minutes over the course of a year, that's a tiny percentage of the work you do. Lobbying is communicating with a legislator, so a member of Congress, or their staff that expresses a view about specific legislation. So again, for something to be considered lobbying, you have to have done all three. You have to talk to a member of Congress or their staff, or communicate them by email or some other way about specific legislation. But again, if you are not talking about specific legislation, it's not lobbying. So you should feel very comfortable having your member of Congress out. And I just wanted to close this out to talk about our efforts to increase funding for Lead Poisoning Prevention Week and why we at the National Safe and Healthy Housing Coalition and at the National Center for Healthy Housing urge you to encourage your member of Congress to support funding for lead poisoning prevention. Over the past many years, decade and a half, HUD's lead heavy homes funding has fallen from $176 million at its maximum to $110 million annually. The National Safe and Healthy Housing Coalition would like to see HUD's Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes funded at the $230 million. And that is because that is the number that was recommended by a presidential advisory panel in 2000 to actually eradicate lead poisoning. The good news is that this year both the Senate and House have proposed HUD's funding from $110 million, in the case of the Senate to $135 million, and the House to $130. But Congress has not yet passed the FY17 budget. You need to urge them to go along and increase this funding if you are a nonprofit and are allowed to lobby, or if you're some other organization that is allowed to lobby. This just shows the history of HUD funding for lead hazard control, and as you can see, it's gone down steadily since 2003, but we're hoping to get an increase in 2017. Similarly, CDC had their Healthy Homes and Lead Poisoning Prevention Program had drastic cuts between 2011 and 2012. You can see on this slide, this program was cut from $29 million to under $2 million a year, and through all of your hard work and education of your members of Congress about how important it is to do surveillance of children's blood load levels, finally in fiscal year 14 we were able to raise that back up to $15.5 million, and then last year even a little more to $17 million. But we would like to see that doubled, because right now there's not surveillance of children's blood levels in all 50 states, but CDC says that with $35 million they could provide that surveillance in all 50 states. Unfortunately, neither the House nor the Senate budgeted for that amount this year, but as I said, the budget is not final, so they could still increase that. Just showing you again the slide, this is really helpful to educate members of Congress of the drastic funding cuts that happened for CDC's lead poisoning prevention program, and that we really haven't built the program back to where it was. And you've got my information there. You have Chris's information from earlier slides. Please feel free to contact us if you want any more help in engaging your member of Congress. Again, we encourage you to have them out at families' houses, out at your events, out doing site visits, or even if you just sit down for a meeting with them in their office, explain the importance of lead poisoning prevention, and make sure the people that make decisions about resources for lead poisoning prevention are among the people that you educate during Lead Poisoning Prevention Week. So much